From the latest crimes in North Charleston to Walter Scott, Charleston NAACP President Dot Scott speaks exclusively to me for the special edition of Quintin's Close-Ups. God, it's so good to see you again.
Thank you so much for coming and talking with me.
Anytime. You know, I want to get your take on this because there are a couple of headlines that we have seen in the Post and Courier recently. March 16th, a headline from the Post and Courier. North Charleston police, altercation led to a fatal shooting on Reed Street. March 23rd, a headline from the Post and Courier. Affidavit, 15-year-old shot outside North Charleston restaurant trying to break up a drug deal fight. March 28th, this story from ABC News 4. North Charleston police responded to a reported shooting shortly before 10 p.m. to Foxwood Drive and Barclay Avenue. March 30th, North Charleston police responded shortly after 2 a.m. to a report of a gunfire between two vehicles on Taylor Street near Elder Street. This is a shooting that left one guy dead after he crashed the car into the building.
Absolutely.
Can I ask you this? What is going on in North Charleston?
I think because it's North Charleston, the concentration of the folks that are probably involved in the drug culture predominantly are minorities in that community. But if we look at what is the problem is drugs overall. As we have drugs in, let's say, the opium problem, it's a drug problem. A lot of the folks that are involved with the opium, they have access to how I get the money, how do I support the habits. These folks are doing business on what I call zero budget. And so a lot of times these arrangement and sale arrangement they're doing, most time they make promises they can't keep. And the drug culture is like the culture of any other corrupt crime. They are the bosses. I am going to take, there needs to be, like our mayor used to say, retribution for not paying me the money you owe me. So I think a lot of it has to do with the fact that North Charleston has a greater popularity of minorities. You have, that means a greater popularity of the fact that a lot of the drug culture folks are young, African-American male, but you saw it seep through when you saw the killing on Reed Street.
Right.
Even though, from what I understood, I've never seen, I think, a photo, or maybe I have, of the shooter. But we know the victim was a white male, a young white male who was involved in drug culture. So where the people live who are involved is where you're going to see those kinds of behavior. And having said that, though, we have to look at the community itself and says it really is a sad situation that we have that many young folks killing themselves. I don't care what color they are, it is a sad situation. Not to make any excuse why they're involved in it, but we have to state the fact. Environmental issues, access to just basic thing in some of these neighborhoods it's lost. When you've got parents who, in order to survive, are working 2 and 3 jobs, who's taking care of the children? Who's mentoring the children? So we have to factor in everything because it affects everybody. And now our mayor's upset because now my city looks bad. Maybe if we spent more time on actually policing and policing in the right way instead of this bogus stuff for what I call trivial things. We were spending time teaching the officers to how do you seek out crime in a real way. How do you find out who really are the drug? In other words, instead of being out in the street sometime running down cars because I can't read the tag, maybe they needed to be in some kind of training of being tactical and strategic about getting rid of the crime. But it has not been that way. So it's now time the chicken has come home to roost because you don't have a carte blanche that we can just go out and stop anybody and hope that out of 10 stops we can find 8 of them who are doing something illegally by virtue of having guns without permit to carry them, or someone who's has got a warrant that we can pick them up. This is what I see is happening now, and it's unfortunate. So that's my take on what's happening now.
And speaking of Mayor Keith Summy and a couple of other issues that are going on in the community, according to the Post and Courier, North Charleston Mayor Keith Summy blames the criminal justice system for the way that one victim's life ended with the incident with the car crashing into the building. A community activist blames Summary for not funding programs to give disadvantaged young alternatives to selling drugs. And Dorothy Williams says the African American community needs to be doing more to keep young men from shooting each other. So when you hear about the recent crimes in North Charleston, Dot, what goes to your mind? What do you think should happen?
Well, let me address both of I read that, and let me address both of the people who are speaking. I give my hats off to Johnson because he's out there trying to make a difference. He's out there trying to work with the police department and also to try and get these young kids out of the street and having suffered the loss of a grandchild. He understands what it is. On the other hand, Dorothy has the privilege of having the mayor support her and her children when her children are doing some of the same things that these folks out there are doing. So we need to be clear on that. Dorothy is also the one that says, put these kids on chain gang. So if you're not part of the solution, you're part of the problem.
Walter Scott, just recently North Charleston Assistant Police Chief Reggie Burgess apologized, basically saying, quote, "I want to apologize to y'all for what happened April 4th, but I'm not going to let one guy ruin it." What does that tell you, Doc?
Well, the thing about it, it's not, and when he says apologize to y'all, I'm sure he's including himself. Okay. Because the loss of a life, as was the situation with Walter Scott, that's an atrocity to the entire community. And when he said one guy, that's one officer that actually pulled the trigger. But it's a culture that allowed that to happen. So you can't, the one guy taking him off the street unless things change. And the reason we're having some consultation now about what the North Charleston police can do and not do, whether they decide we're just not going to police your neighborhood, then I figure when they plan to not police because that's not the job, because that's the job they're hired to do, then maybe we need to change some of these policemen if they can't abide by the law and not abuse folks' rights. I don't think any of the advocates out here, when we're talking about issues around law enforcement, object not in the slightest to policing our neighborhood and keeping us safe. That's what we want. We just don't want the abuse of life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness of law-abiding citizens, and oftentimes that happens. And we do not want, even if there are crimes being permitted, we want those criminals to be treated like any other criminal. We want them locked up. We want their rights not violated, and surely we have to find a way to stop killing people. Because I was so proud of the recent settlement for the Drayton family, because I had been speaking with the sister 2 weeks ago. In fact, I directed them to the attorney that actually handled the case. And to get a civil judgment afterward, that oftentimes you never even hear about it. But more times than not, there is that civil judgment. The one with Walter Scott came because we were in a political season, and it came quite readily. And then, as I always said, without the videotape, we may still be discussing that right now. As is with every other incident of a shooting, because while we are now hearing about how the solicitor handled selecting of jurors, and we wonder why it's hard for the aggrieved to win in court. We've got a justice system that must adjust in order to give justice. And that's what we're working for. And we are far behind a lot of city, but when you think about Ferguson, I've said it before, North Charleston, you could probably put transparency over and it line up so perfectly it'll be scary. Wow.
Well, Doc Scott, it's always good talking to you. Thank you so much for your time.
You're welcome.
I appreciate this.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.